Okay, first we'll be starting with wrist extension with radial deviation. For against gravity, your client will be seated with their elbow and their hand on the table in pronation. You'll be stabilizing at the dorsal aspect of the forearm, and you'll be feeling for the extensor carpi radialis longus and brevis between the base of the second and third metacarpals. So I'm going to ask my client to bring your hand up and towards your face. Okay, one more time. And then now I'm going to provide resistance between the index finger and the thumb into flexion and ulnar deviation. So do that one more time. And don't let me win. Good. Okay, and now for wrist extension with radial deviation gravity lesson, I'm going to have my client in mid position with their pinky on the table. And I'm going to have them do the same motion. So bring your hand out and towards your face. Good. And one more time. Good. Okay. Now for wrist extension with ulnar deviation, against gravity, your client will start the same with their arm pronated on the table, and you're going to stabilize at the distal end of the forearm. And this time we'll be feeling for the extensor carpi ulnaris. So I'm going to ask you to bring your hand up and, yes, out. Okay, do one more time. Okay, and I felt that muscle. And so now this time I'm going to provide resistance, and don't let me win. Okay, perfect. And now for wrist extension with ulnar deviation gravity lesson, we're going to put the forearm at 45 degrees pronation with the fingers flexed. Okay, so I'm going to hold here. Okay, now I'm going to ask you to do that same motion. So bring your hand out. Yes. Out and down. Okay, good. And now for wrist flexion with radial deviation, you're going to have your client seated with their arm on the table with their forearm, yes, in supination, with their fingers and thumb relaxed. And you'll be stabilizing at the distal end of the forearm, and you'll be feeling for the flexor carpi radialis between the second metacarpal bone and the palmaris longus. So I'm going to ask you to bring your wrist towards you and bring your thumb towards me. Okay, and one more time. Bring it towards you and then towards me. Perfect. And now this time I'm going to provide resistance. Okay, don't let me win. Awesome. So now for gravity lesson, we're going to have the forearm in mid position and still stabilizing at the distal end of the humerus. And so feeling for the flexor carpi radialis, I'm going to get you to bring your hand in and towards you. And towards you. In towards you. Okay, one more time. Okay. And now for wrist flexion with ulnar deviation, they will start in the same position, forearm on the table in supination, so hand towards the sky. And I'll be stabilizing the distal forearm again. And we're going to be feeling for the flexor carpi ulnaris, which is at the base of the fifth metacarpal. Okay? So I'm going to ask you to bring your hand up and your pinky towards your opposite shoulder. Good. And now I'm going to provide resistance at that hypothenar eminence. So don't let me win. Good. And now we're going to feel for the flexor carpi radialis, which is at the base of the second metacarpal. Do it one more time. And you can also feel the palmaris longus work. Okay, now for wrist flexion with ulnar deviation gravity lesson, the client will be seated with the elbow on the table, arms supinated at 45 degrees. Okay, and just relax. And I'm going to ask you to do that same motion again. Awesome. And I'm stabilizing at the distal end of the forearm while still feeling the muscle fire.